Hello, Exiles. Long time no see, especially for Path of Exile 1, because it's been like a full year since we got to see any of these. And did they drop a doozy? I mean, I feel like GGG might be the masters of coming back and giving us what we're asking for in like a way that gets people back to hype, because Secrets of the Atlas looks very nice. We really needed like a proper full endgame revamp, and we're getting it. Kind of interesting. It's more like they took Atlas memories and twisted them into an endgame progression, which honestly, smart idea. Atlas memories were already kind of cool, and I felt like they were, for the quality of the concept, underutilized. So turning that into proper endgame is honestly a smart idea and a cool way of interacting with the Atlas going forward. I'm very happy about that. I'm much more happy that when I hit Control F at the start of this, Unearth did not turn up anything. There is something for Detonate Dead, but it's not a big something, even though it looks like a big something. But we'll get to that in a moment. So we're going to get started on the patch notes review. As per usual, I'm going to try to go right to the good stuff. I don't want to waste any time, not just because, let's be honest, people don't want to sit here and go over every single bullet point, but also because I'm lazy and I don't want to have to edit that long. So you know I'm really trying. So how does the new endgame work? Well, it's Atlas memories. If you've done Atlas memories, you know what I'm talking about. Basically, you start on a map and you kind of follow a chain and you have to follow those maps in sequence, and the maps are provided for you, which is very nice. You can roll them before you run them. You can put in all your usual fragments to make them stronger or difficult or whatever. In this case, you're going to have altars, kind of like in Exarch Eater content, but they apply to the whole chain, and they basically happen after you kill the boss. And then at the end of the chain, you're going to have a new special, big-time, important boss. And that's already kind of cool. Honestly, it's a very cool way of approaching kind of the Conqueror archetype. And then on top of that, we're getting 3 new Pinnacle bosses. That's damn awesome, in my opinion. I'm very excited and happy about this, that we're getting 3 Pinnacle bosses. I hope it's not too much for them, right? I hope they're good, is probably a safer way of describing that, talking about it. I feel a bit of concern that maybe they didn't have enough time to get everything done, because it feels like they kind of just started working on this. I guess their team, when they knuckle down and actually apply all their effort to Poe 1, can really push something out fast. The really big thing that they tried to sell with this, though, is that these memory chains, when you do them, can get you to levels of juice in a map that just go, like, beyond anything we've ever been able to experience. You have everything you're used to, right, that you can apply to a map, plus these stacking modifiers that all kind of culminate in that final map. And I like that personally, and I hope this is an observation you found elsewhere, and if not, then I'm glad you're finding it here. But this sounds like it's going to be somewhat competitive with T17s as, like, optimal juice, scenarios, right? You have T17s, you have memory threads. That's a pretty good way to go about it, in my opinion. There's also this kind of sub thing to it where you have like special abilities. I found that kind of gimmicky. I don't know how that's really going to play into things. Generally speaking, it looks like it's just going to make you stronger and able to do new stuff. And this, I would almost say there's kind of some sentinel mechanics going on where you can affect the monsters to make the loot they drop you better. That's cool. It's really not like the exciting part, in my opinion. I think what really needs to be talked about are memory strands, which is like, it's like the tiering system for Path of Exile 2, except it respects crafting. The way memory strands work is the higher the number of them, up to 100, the better the mods you roll or like identify even on the item. So you pick up a rare item with 100, we'll say. When you ID that, pretty much every mod on that item is probably going to be tier 1 or tier 2. And then on top of that, using crafting currency will lower the strands, but will keep guaranteeing high quality mods until the number gets much lower. And then there's all sorts of other like new crafting items that we're going to get that interact with that. That is absurdly strong. You might not think that at first glance, which I don't know why you wouldn't think that at first glance. I think it's more of it's stronger than you even think, because something like, say, fossil crafting, right? The one thing you can't really do with fossil crafting is influence the tier of the mods that you roll. You get a high memory strands item and fossil craft on it. There you go. That's it. If you get all the mods you need on like a 100 memory strands base, it's probably done in one shot. That's absurd to me personally. I think it's very exciting, like a nice way to find base items that have a lot more value than we're typically used to, just generally speaking on the ground, right? An amethyst ring, they showed it in the teaser, I believe, for the whole thing. It was like 92 strands, and it ID'd T1 life, T1 dex, and then they like started throwing currency at it and the strands dropped, but just the mods it was getting were all very high quality. So it's almost like it's almost kind of like rod crafting, where this is going to produce a lot of items that just have tons of high tier modifiers, and maybe it won't be ideal, but it will be of such high quality that it'll be something that a lot of people, especially people who are looking for a specific kind of niche item, will definitely shell out a like a divine for. So it's got a huge profit potential in that regard, just to be able to get either the base or to have the base yourself and make it into something, which I don't think is going to be very hard, especially for people who are a little more experienced with crafting. Next, on top of all of that word salad that literally took my breath away, we have the Mercenaries of Trarthus, which is Diablo 2 mercenaries combined with Rogue Exiles. It's Rogue Exiles plus. You can hire them to beat people up for you, which is already kind of a cool concept. But when I say they're like Diablo 2, I mean in Diablo 2, you had a mercenary that you could have with you, and you could edit its gear. You can do that with these guys, and that's kind of the coolest part for me personally. This is like this is almost like an anime guardian that has its own skill set that you can personally manage. And I believe they actually buffed Anime Guardian as well too. I don't even have that in my notes, but they buffed Anime Guardian. I believe it doesn't drop items on death anymore, which is also massive, right? Everything is damn crazy right now. This is cool though, because it's got all the stuff you would expect alongside this. Basically, the mercenaries themselves are an encounter. You have to beat them to hire them or to steal one of their items, which is hilarious. They have their own transfigure gems that you can get that are new and unique. That's also really cool. I'm sure some of those are going to be very strong. If they die, you can pay gold to resurrect them. That's a very nice gold sink, personally. It's the mercenaries themselves. I don't know if they're character specific. If they're tied to your account, though, these are going to be amazing for leveling alts, right? You have a really strong one who just carries you through low tier maps. That'd be amazing. Also, they don't level up, so you kind of have to keep cycling them out. I think that's a pretty cool system as well. But of course, with anything, you're kind of like, where's the power creep? And they have infamous modifiers on their items, which you can only get from them. And then obviously they have some uniques that spawn in the same way. And the infamous modifiers are very interesting because, so we didn't get to see a lot of, we didn't get to see a lot of these modifiers, but we do get to see things like traps and mines chain 2 additional times, minion cooldown recovery rate, and then like an example of the new unique. These are going to be fairly specialized. If something hits your build, it's going to feel really good to get. This immediately, I feel, for so many trap and mine builds, it's just like instant something that if I said aloud would probably get me demonetized. Going forward, in a move that I don't think surprised anyone, Settlers got added to the core game. That's not true. That probably surprised a lot of people, but it also got added in a way where we are no longer building up a town, right? Settlers is gone, King's March is staying. That's probably a better way to put it. We still have crops, we still have ore. They're now an endgame thing you can specialize into. It's a gold sink to turn your gold into currency if you want to, or items rather. Which personally, I love King's March. I really do. The Recombinator got reworked, kind of. We now have 2 options. You can use the normal Recombinator as you knew it, and you can also use the PO2 version. I don't know why you would use the PO2 version, but I'm sure there's going to be examples in the game where the PO2 version is preferred. I don't know what they're going to be. I do know that something like crazy physical damage rolls on your weapons is not going to be one of them. That said, overall, the PO2 version of the Recombinator is probably better in PO1 just because it's so much easier to get 2 of the mods you want on different bases and smash them together. And if you lose the bases, that's fine because you have Orbs of Alteration and you can roll on one base until you get the mod you need. Probably the biggest change is that rune crafting is gone, and yet runes are still here because now they are rune graphs. And these are basically tattoos for your masteries. So Karui tattoos rolled into core through this, and now we have mastery tattoos. So instead of passive skills, it goes on your mastery. Some of the examples here are honestly not the most exciting, although Runegraft of Nova Mark is kind of neat. That's Astral Projector, as long as you're marking targets. They showed some much better ones, like I believe the Time one, the Runegraph for the Time rune replacement, which Time was already a very expensive rune. I'm sure it's going to be just as expensive. What's cool about that, though, is it was like 20% chance for skills to not consume a cooldown, and that would also affect skills that had a like trigger skills. So basically, if you're triggering at twice the rate, right, of your trigger, basically, let's say it triggers once every 0.4 seconds and your cyclone hits every 0.19, right, as an example, where you have 2 potential, that rune effectively becomes 20% more damage for your trigger build. It's actually kind of a massive potential gain. So the ones that they're showing, not terribly exciting, although Solwick is pretty exciting. They're not the most exciting, but they're not afraid to put power in these. Keep an eye on these. I feel like shipping for good rune graphs might be major money. Basically the same as shipping for runes was. So, you know, nothing. The more things change, the more they stay the same. And on the last docket for what did they do to the endgame, Betrayal has been reworked. Thank goodness, personally. Some of this I really, really love. In fact, almost all of this I really, really love. The fact that the Mastermind fight is now pulled away from the Betrayal board. If you do the Mastermind fight, it doesn't reset the board anymore. It seems like to get in there, you just get a fragment. Or it says fragment in the notes, but the way they showed it, in fact, the way they showed it, you just get a medallion, right? It's actually just a token, right? It's like a key. It's not really a fragment because you don't need multiples. You just have the one and you go in. That's really awesome because it makes every safe house you clear more exciting, just in the sense that your medallion has you have a chance to get a free Katarina fight. You don't actually have to do, what is it? I think on average 3. On top of that, all flames are back. They're kind of like scarabs now, but they do more funky things. You can do them in place of scarabs. You can do them with scarabs. They all synergize well. In this case, it removes a bunch of drops from monsters so that their loot pool shrinks to various different items. Like in this, like right, no equipment, right? Nothing your character can equip, no flasks, no tinctures. Probably all currency. That's really good. That on its own is very good. You have some monster packs that do amazing things. You get huge pack size on your roll. You get whatever you can get from scarabs, I guess, for the same effect, or even just Atziri fragments. And maybe that goes incredibly hard. It's going to be hard to tell because we got to find out. And in fact, I think you could run 4 of these at the same time. So it might go very hard. The Veiled Chaos Orb is back, though. The Veiled Orb is now the Veiled Exalted Orb, if that's what you're used to. If you are from after the time of the Veiled Chaos Orb, this is the old version. It reforges the entire item with a random Veiled modifier. That probably sounds like booty to some people, but that respects meta mods. So if you get your prefixes right, or rather, if you're crafting boots and you get your suffixes right, and then you lock your suffixes, if you lock your suffixes and you throw a Veiled Chaos Orb at it, the odds of hitting movement speed of some kind with an extra beneficial effect are very high. Like this is a banger way to make boots if you can get one of these together. And I believe the Chaos Orbs now drop from Syndicate safe houses, not the actual Mastermind. So that's a big win as well. Just more options for crafting your gear, which seems to be what we're getting a lot of. What I don't like, what I really, really don't like, I'll be honest, is that they moved all of the crafts from Unveiling to maps. That is to say, you find them as clickable objects outside of boss rooms as you're going through the Atlas. That's not terrible. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that's like bad, but I personally enjoyed that I could zero in on Betrayal and make sure I could find my crafts early on. Now that I can't do that, I'm a little bit salty. I feel like some of the crafts I really like or rely on are going to inevitably be like at a T16 map, you know? I'm going to be like, oh, I'm going to get Fire and Chaos Res. What's that at? T14. Oh, I don't want that. I hope they properly balance the maps or I hope they properly balanced where you find the crafts so that they're relevant, because those, like the hybrid resistance crafts, the hybrid attribute mod crafts, those are very, very disproportionately useful to players early on for solving problems. And it just feels very possible that they're going to be like, well, if people want those, they should have to work for them. And then I'm going to be like, well, why did... And then on top of that, now you can unveil items just by right-clicking on them, which is a great change, especially if it would let me learn the crafting recipe, but it doesn't. I'm whining. I know. Now, all of that said, Betrayal is getting a couple other changes that I think merit a pretty significant mention, specifically these two right here. Bitterbind, giving you a ton of crit now per Spectre, and having its own unique pool of Unveil mods is pretty insane. That's, I believe one of the Unveil mods was +1 maximum Spectre as well. That is, it's, I don't know anything about Spectres, generally speaking. Like, I know how to use support Spectres. I don't know how to use offensive ones. I have to assume this is insane for people who like Spectres. I could be completely wrong, but I just from the idea of if you could run support Spectres as a general spellcaster, I feel like this would be a very strong shield. But I also feel like just that much Spectre support on one item in the shield slot probably doesn't exist elsewhere. I don't know how important it is for that build, though. You'd have to talk to Gazi, and I'm sure he's saying much more than I am about this. In a more generically exciting way, the Cane of Kulamak can now have 4 veiled modifiers. I'm not sure how good that is, because they did say that these items have their own kind of pools of veil modifiers now, so maybe it's easier to get a bad Cane. But if all of the usual mods are there, the fact that you can get 4 is insane. That is oh wow. That's a whole new level of, I mean, you can get crit and attack speed, can't you? You can get crit and attack speed with your offensive mods. Kane was already kind of a weird item in the sense that it could be best for certain things and it could be generically very good for certain things. I'm wondering if the right Kane is now like an extreme chase item. All right, let's get to the fun part. We're here for balance. We're all here for balance. We want to see how the meta shifts. First things first, lightning strike. Maybe not necessarily nuked from orbit. I guess nuked from orbit gently is the way I would put it. The way lightning strike used to work is there was kind of a trick you could do to double the damage abusing Ancestral Call. At least that's how I understood it. And they've really nerfed the damage of the projectiles. They cut it in half. It's 50% less. So it's probably much worse. Molten Strike and Molten Strike of the Zenith got a much smaller nerf. So that was like just a little love tap, which is fair. I don't know that those builds were problematic, I think is a good way to put it. I know Molten Strike of the Zenith was very strong, but it was also a you have to invest in this build kind of strong, which generally I don't think those require a terribly big nerf. It's okay for a build to be incredibly broken with massive investment. It's a problem when it's cheap. And Lightning Strike was maybe a little too efficient, like every step of the way. On like a lighter note, intensity is less dumb. It was also buffed overall, but intensity, the stacks now fall off much more slowly, that's actually a big change for the build, especially if you're running Pinpoint. Pinpoint, I feel, is like kind of slept on, and now that you don't lose your intensity stacks as quickly, there might be something there. But also Pinpoint was maybe the one where you didn't want your intensity stacking up, so who knows? The actual base intensity, though, is a very big more damage multiplier, and if the stacks can stay up better while you're moving in a boss fight, it becomes much more viable to run. On top of that, Arcane Surge got, 10% cast speed at like all levels, but that is not all. That is not even close to all. The actual support gem effect is now a much, much larger more multiplier. In fact, I think this is the best support gem in the game now, numerically. It also still, we still get some mana regen rate. They did taper that down because it seems like they're kind of hitting mana a little bit, which, fair. Mana scaling has been pretty strong for a little while now. Archmage caught a bit of a nerf with that as well. I think I did the numbers on this. About 15% nerf on that, which I'd say that's pretty gentle. I don't think that's going to break any Archmage builds. Some of the changes here definitely don't help it, and then what they did to Hierophant might kill Archmage builds, at least with Hierophant. We'll see about that. The Hierophant change is pretty rough. Otherwise, most of the self-casting supports got buffed in a pretty big way. Spell Echo got buffed a lot. It lost its less damage multiplier, and the mana cost multiplier went down. Spell Echo is probably actually one of the better mana efficiency support gems out there, because it's basically going to speed up your casting, but it's only adding the mana cost for the one cast, right? Every other cast is free. That's a pretty big deal. I think the biggest buffs probably go to Pinpoint, which now has a much smaller, less damage multiplier. It's in many ways, Pinpoint already kind of feels like just a better version of lesser multiple projectiles if you're looking for some sort of shotgun effect. And now it's like a lot better for that in that regard. Unleash also numerically popped off pretty hard. I'm not going to lie. That's 41% to 36%, and then the Awaken version is 33%. This is really good for a lot of things. Personally, long term, like if I were going to do something with it, I'm looking at kind of Reap and Exsanguinate, because we'll get to them in a moment. They also got buffed. And I really like playing a Reap character and having Exsanguinate on an Unleash setup and just kind of running a double 6-link with that, because you can get a lot of physical damage dots stacked up on a single target very quickly and efficiently. So that's pretty cool. It also is like a clear speed engine. I've always felt Unleash should have been better than it was. Maybe it's good enough now. It's just mechanically Unleash seems very strong. And I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the new support gem, which is Focus Channeling. Focus Channeling is nice because it almost feels like this is kind of a Archmage light, right? The longer you cast a spell for, the more it costs and the more damage it does. That excites me for a completely different reason than Unleash does, because I love Stormburst, which also got buffed, and we'll talk about that in a moment when we get to it as well. Just a little bit of insight thrown in as we get to these things. But overall, I would say one of the most notable changes, other than the Animate Guardian one, which I already talked about, one of the most notable changes is probably going to be the overall buff to physical and chaos dot spells. I was doing the numbers on a lot of them. Overall, it seems like it was between 10 and 20% just base damage buff. This was much needed. I don't think anyone contests that. Those skills were all very basically okay, but kind of fell off late, and they just never really felt strong at any point in their progression. It's very possible these skills still kind of fall off late, but now feel strong at least through their like inception. So probably very good league starter candidates if people figure them out in time, or maybe a good league starter candidate down the line when people have played with them a little bit. But I see a lot of potential there personally. For me, the biggest change that I saw like across the single target spells was Stormburst. And some people probably don't care about Stormburst, but Stormburst is very near and dear to my heart. It's a wonderful channeling skill because it hits very frequently. It scales your damage with duration, as in duration is basically a more damage modifier. And cutting its cast speed, or rather making it, 20% faster, that is a tremendously big damage bonus to a skill that is already known for having pretty good single target without a lot of investment. Having that new channeling support, also very good. And the reason why Stormburst is so cool is because it hits so often. You go for, Crusader? Whatever Baron's influence is from Conquerors. On Jewelry, you can get life gained on hit with spells. And if you stack that with Stormburst, you can get like enough life gained on hit and enough hit rate where you just fill up your HP instantly as long as you're still casting. And you combine that with things like the infused channeling buff, which takes so infused channeling is a more damage multiplier, but it also makes you take less damage while channeling. That went from 8 to 12%. So there's a lot going for this. If I wasn't going to do a run back on Kitavas, I would be considering league starting this. I won't lie, because this does not take a lot to at least kill an enemy quickly. It'll probably be great for just blowing up mercenaries very fast. Golems. Golems in general seem to have been buffed. Overall, most of their effects, the buffs that they put on the player, have gotten stronger. Lightning Golem gained a flat mana regen, which is very cool. Chaos Golem was murdered in its sleep. No, Chaos Golem, its identity was physical damage reduction, and I really loved it. So this one hurts me a little bit, but giving you chaos damage resistance and damage over time multi is really good. Chaos damage isn't bad. It's just that what it did is gone now. Luckily, it got a little bit replaced by Summon Stone Golem, which, where's that? Summon Stone Golem now gives 20% increased defenses. That's not flat physical damage reduction, but if you're running armor, that's something. You know, it's a major armor node on the tree, more or less, which I'll take it. There's a really cool thing you can do with the transfigured version of Stone Golem, the one that absorbs melee damage. If you play, I believe it's Elementalist, and you get those, those Golem buff nodes, and you get the ones from the tree, you can become like absurdly durable to melee damage hits. And maybe with these other Golem changes and the changes to Elementalist, that's going to be something to look at as well. Now, unfortunately for me, who plays Detonate Dead of Chain Reaction on Kitava's Thirst, the skill suffered a catastrophic, 35% damage nerf. The build is completely gutted. No, I'm just kidding. This does nothing. This does nothing to the build. This line of text here on the gem here, it does nothing. We care about this, the one that scales the corpse. I haven't seen anything yet that says that they've changed this. As long as this hasn't been changed, the skill has lost a little bit of damage. Realistically, I wouldn't be surprised if it was less than 10 or 15%, just because of, less than 10 or 15% late game. Some of the early game damage might not be quite as good, but in mapping especially, you're not going to feel this at all. So I saw that and I was like, okay, if that's the worst they're going to do, I'm fine with it. The only thing to consider is that our single target, at least for Pinnacle content, was already kind of not amazing. And I'm wondering if this was enough to make Volatile Debt of Seething a better option for single target. This is again, we're not really caring about the base damage here, we're caring about the explosion. The explosion on Seething is smaller, but it will consume basically all of your corpses out every time it procs. And that can be pretty good. Is it better? I don't know. That's something I'm going to have to test personally, actually in the game, but I found that Chain Reaction and Seething were pretty close before, and with Chain Reaction having caught some strays, especially this one now, not even a stray, this was a direct hit, this might push Seething ahead. It's hard to say, because the general corpse life value on this is still much lower, right? 4% is not very good. 5% is 25% more. The reason Seething kind of gets a mention is because if you're using a brand with Desecrate, you're adding more corpses than just the 10 that you would have on average per proc. So proccing multiple times could create scenarios where the burst is much higher. I have no idea how to check that. I'll be perfectly honest. I have no idea. I just right now testing that is very difficult. So it'll be something I do when I play the character in the league. There'll be updates about the build, and there will be a new build guide as per usual. Even though I'll basically just be recreating the old one because nothing has changed. Nothing has changed for that build, at least. It's still going to be incredibly durable and map incredibly well, which is what's most important, I feel, going into some new content personally. But let's get back to the changes, because there are still a few of them. So Ralakesh's Impatience caught a nerf, which is unfortunate because it was kind of a chase unique. I don't think it's bad, though. I don't think this made it unusable or even undesirable. Getting a maximum endurance charge version with high movement speed, which it can now roll on a right side tree character, is probably going to be one of your better boot options if you need survivability fixing, because that's 12% physical damage reduction. You're not going to find that on another pair of boots anywhere. It is actually still very good. And then the other effects are also very good. And then kind of a smaller note, but I think one worth mentioning, is that Kirak mods, the ones you pay Chaos Orbs for on the map device, those have generally speaking become much cheaper. They're either cheaper or they're more expensive, but for the cost they do a lot more. I think there was maybe one exception, which was Rogue Exiles, but I don't actually know that was even true, because now you were going to get 7 Exiles guaranteed per map instead of 3, and just the way stacking content works, that might actually be worth the overall price increase. Generally speaking, the mods that you get from Kirak for Chaos Orbs are going to be a lot better, and I think that's great, because it seems like the theme of the league is going to be juice the hell out of it and then juice it some more. A less exciting change, in fact, I would say a downright depressing change, is that the amulet mods for area of effect and area damage, projectile speed, projectile damage, etc., those have been moved to gloves, and then the gem level mods for gloves are gone. They've been moved. They're only on helmets now. I don't love that, personally. I liked being able to get, say, projectile levels on my gloves, especially early on in the game, and those are just removed from existence. That's only on helmets now, and if you're playing Kitava's Thirst, you do not get to do that with your helmet. I'm sure plenty of other builds are affected in a similar way. That is a pretty major change. It's, as far as I can tell, though, it's really the only big negative veiled modifier change that we're getting thrown our way. The significantly most exciting changes, though, in my opinion, maybe I'm a little too excited about this, but resistance modifiers can no longer roll or be crafted on weapons. That's really good, because now they're not going to gum up your suffixes. But even better, baby! Life and mana leech modifiers are now suffixes. You're never going to have 2 really good physical damage prefixes on your weapon and slam life leech. That's gone. It's done with. I'm so happy for this change. I feel like this needed to happen a long time ago, but it's here now, and I'm here for it. I feel like a dark age has passed. This, because I don't know if maybe it was just me, but this was always the culprit, right? It was always a leash modifier hit, and you were like, that's the one thing you could not afford it to be. But it's fixed, and I'm happy with it. And then maybe as an honorable mention for people, buyer beware, if you were looking to do a wand attack build, wands roll attack modifiers less often. That made me a little bit unhappy, I won't lie, because obviously when they're talking about scepters and daggers and stuff, war staves and attack daggers are not affected by this change. There is not an attack wand. I feel like technically imbued wand would be like the attack wand, but not this. And that's well, Palsteron is shipping out an incredibly exciting looking ballista build with power siphon, and I hope this doesn't affect people, because they don't tell us how much less often. A build at your league starting stops being a good build for league starting if getting attack modifiers is borderline impossible, you know? You got to be able to make that at least decent attack wand happen, or you're in a lot of trouble. So I hope GGG didn't get too aggressive with this, because wands are in a really bad state if they did. All right. Last but not least, we have ascendancy changes, and we have some very good ascendancy changes. A lot of these I quite like. Berserker, weird one. When I was first reading this, I was like, but then I kept reading it and I was like, oh, okay, I kind of see what they're going for now. Defy Pain has kind of become something that is meant to synergize with Aspect of Carnage. It's going to keep you from dying, right? It's going to take that increased damage taken modifier, but you're going to have moments where you will have that full damage taken. So for bosses, Aspect of Carnage is still kind of scary. But outside of that, in mapping, Aspect of Carnage is very much so the downside is negated with Defy Pain. And I think that's really good. Defy Pain no longer hits you for an enormous amount of damage. It just kind of stacks up and makes you tankier until the cycle repeats. but in a very consistent way, which is what's important, is that it's consistent. And then kind of a big thing, the crit nodes on Berserker are gone. That was surprising. I think some people are going to be upset about that, but the good news is at least what they replaced it with are good nodes. What do we have? First of all, Gore Dancer, which is now Aspect of Carnage's follow-up node. So you get your 40% more damage multiplier, and then you go get 30% of life leeches instant. That's, on its own, I'm going to say right now, that is very strong. I actually look at Berserker right now, and I'm like, oh, this guy can live. You know, he can live through it. He's got some stuff going for him. You could do that with Rage and probably go to town about it. Especially considering with Rage, you don't want all of your life leech to be instant. But this is probably enough for that to feel really good once you get everything going. The other crit node has become Ancestral Fury, and that's pretty cool because it's basically the Warrior's Legacy unique ring, except it doesn't take up a ring socket, and it doesn't give you 20% less attack speed. Berserker as a Flicker Strike option may have just like gone to the moon a little bit, because Warrior's Legacy, I believe, is strongest with Flicker Strike. Just the whole, your strike skill targets the previous location. If you're against a really big boss and you're teleporting to like far enough away when you hit a new attack angle, this can actually be like 100% more damage in some scenarios. Potentially very powerful, depending on how you make use of it. And yet, with that whole glowing review, I think Champion got the best of it. This is a holy fuck. Like, no, wow. For starters, Fortitude is now whatever your maximum fortification is, you have it. That is so good, especially if you're playing like a bow character, right? I'm sure Ben jumped out of his seat. He got jump scared. He's like, what the? There's a pair of gloves. I should have gotten these out ahead of time. So the Celestial Brace exists. Plus 10 fortification, right? And now it's going to be, okay, plus 1 attack speed per fortification. And then you have Fortitude, which is going to guarantee you have like the 30 at all times. And then you get Unstoppable Hero. What this does is for every fortification over 20, which is the normal maximum that you have, you get 3% more armor and evasion. So with the Celestial Brace, nothing else, right? No anointments or anything. That is now 30% more armor and evasion. And 3% increased attacking, 3% increased attack speed. Which means that for Celestial Brace on this character, you get 30% attack speed from the gloves. This does assume a plus 10 roll. 30% attack speed from the gloves. Another 10 fortification, so that's 20% less damage buffed to 30% less damage. And then from Unstoppable Hero, you get 30% more armor and evasion, and another 30% attack speed. You don't chase this item, it chases you if you're a champion. It's crazy. Absolutely bonkers. And for this reason alone, my old Dominating Blow of Inspiring build, which I would not league start, is probably going to happen again, assuming I can afford a Celestial Brace, because I feel like that might go way up in price. This is bonkers. And as if that weren't good enough, Worthy Foe no longer requires Conquer and now has you taunt on hit. If you're wondering why that's good, it's because Worthy Foe is the node that it makes it so you don't need accuracy. It makes the enemy take 20% increased damage. The downside of Worthy Foe is you have to go through kind of a subpar node to get to it. So now, for 3 nodes, you can get Fortitude, Unstoppable Hero, and Worthy Foe. And you still have a whole Ascendancy to go for. And just to really tack it on, the Conqueror Ascendancy actually looks pretty good too. It's been changed to Worthy Causes. Having a placed banner does not prevent you from gaining Valor. And they have 50% increased duration. The downside being it requires Inspirational, which means you can't really stack it all together. But long term, right, if I could get like the Forbidden Flesh, Forbidden Flame to jump to that, oh my goodness. I like, personally, right, on a personal level, I'm salivating at the thought of Dominating Blow. I feel like that build just got 100 times stronger. Many other builds probably got just as strong, just as much of a buff though. Champion is looking insane. I'm almost wondering if we're going to see some of this toned down. I hope not. Guardian got changes. I'm still mad about the initial rework, and this doesn't make me happy. I will say I'm glad Harmony of Purpose isn't Link related anymore, because I'll never pass up a chance to hate on Link skills. At least the new effect is from Freesia, and it is interesting and fun to play with. But overall, I feel like the old Guardian identity was still better. Don't get me wrong, these are good changes, but I want my old minion speed focus ascendancy back. Hierophant got the... I'm looking at my notes for Hierophant right now, and it just says oof, which is probably accurate. So they lost their awesome reservation. They lost their 50% less mana cost. The 50% less cost thing is what really kicks him in the lack of pants. I'm gonna be perfectly honest. That was incredible after the Archmage rework. Now that this is gone, this is like when they talk about how GGG has a tendency to nerf things from too many angles at once. Archmage is a support gem. I'm not sure it should have been nerfed if this is being taken out. Maybe I don't know enough. That said, 1% of mana regenerated per second is pretty good. That's better than it sounds if you don't actually know what that means, because generally speaking, mana regen does not get affected by a flat value that is percentage based. And the other parts of the node are still there, right? It still gives you 20% of maximum mana as extra maximum energy shield, and it still gives you a bunch of AoE. So it's fine, right? Maybe even with all of the other buffs to self-casting, Hierophant Archmage isn't even nerfed. There's a very distinct possibility of that. It might actually be just as strong or stronger when you factor in all the other numbers, because there are a lot of other things that got buffed. And when you're doing that, considering Archmage was so dominant as a self-cast archetype, you should make other changes to kind of to rein it in. So this might not be over nerfed, but that does hurt, right? Especially the reservation efficiency. That was mean. All right, Saboteur. Saboteur is very cool. We got some very nice Freesia type nodes coming over. Crit from Explosive Expert, and then Shrapnel Specialist to get there, which is kind of like a Nimbus at home, except it doesn't require a ring slot, so it's more competitive than I give it credit for. Bomb Specialist, meanwhile, is it's still the undisputed dumbest ascendancy node in the game. I don't know how I don't know what to say about this other than why does this exist? You have two extremely conditional, very niche effects. All right, the Bomb Specialist, 30% chance to deal 50% more area damage. That comes out to 15% more damage. Shrapnel Specialist, built correctly in certain circumstances, is going to be 50% more damage. So, like, how is this the competing node, right? The 30% chance to take 50% less area damage. What? When does that come up? Okay, the one situation this is gonna like be felt is maybe the cannibals that throw the fire at you, because that's an area hit. Maybe you survive that a little better. Probably not, considering how overtuned it is. This is just a terrible node. Someone needs to like sit someone down, sit Mark down, and be like, Mark, tell me when I'm supposed to take this, and he won't have an answer, because the answer is never. That said, Trickster caught some nerfs, which Trickster was probably the most dominant ascendancy in the game. And honestly, this is very gentle, I feel. Polymath got nerfed in a pretty big way, 33% less damage from the effect, but getting it up to like 20% more damage for your ascendancy notable is still pretty good. I think a lot of builds that naturally get the masteries they need to benefit from it are going to take it still. And Escape Artist got nerfed a little bit. I think that's all fine. I don't think this is going to make Trickster unplayable. I think this was probably one of the more rational, level-headed nerfs I've ever seen out of GGG. And then, of course, we have Elementalist, who kind of came out of nowhere with what I want to say is the most interesting Ascendancy rework. It's not as obvious in its strengths, but that doesn't mean it's not strong. Shaper of Storms is now, I would say it's very easy to get a 50% increased damage taken multiplier on your target. The reason I say that is because, I mean, you need 100% increased effective shock. Right? 25% is your baseline. The cap is 50. If you get 100% increased effect, any damage will shock for 50%. That's good. It's kind of doubly good, I think, for even like Lightning Conduit, who can get to that value much more quickly now with much less investment. So Shaper of Storms is Glass Cannon. Shaper of Winter is like Shaper of Storms in the sense that it also applies an increased damage taken modifier, but it also applies a defensive component, which is, I think that's really cool that you look at the two of these and you don't necessarily want both anymore. You could definitely still take both, but this is now, they deal less damage, they take some more damage, and of course, it's very easy for you to chill them. So that's just kind of good. But it does not guarantee the effective chill, so you have to properly invest in it, which is something to consider. You don't have a floor anymore with the chill. There's no at least. And that's probably worth considering. Builds that hit fast for very small amounts are never going to want Shaper of Winter. They're going to love Shaper of Storms, though, because normally they wouldn't be able to do anything with shock. And now it's anything gets it done, you know? And Shaper of Flames kind of baited me into thinking it was bad. And I think part of that is because it was a very big damage node before, and now the damage is gone. So Rip Ignite, but enemies ignited by you convert 40% of their physical damage to fire. Obviously, that's a very strong way to augment your physical damage reduction, right? The downside of it inevitably being that if you haven't ignited an enemy, you don't get that effect, right? You walk around a corner and they bukake you from all over the screen and you just die instantly. But that's when I realized that this is not a map survivability node. This is for fixing your physical mitigation against bosses and individual strong enemies. So actually, I think this is very strong, especially considering this is basically the Mantle of Flames. Wait, is that what it's called? Especially considering this is basically Cloak of Flame, but on any character without sacrificing your body armor. So that alone is probably enough to make this takeable on certain characters. And the fact that it fixes physical damage against really big hits from specific enemies, there's a niche for that, where the fact that it's conditional works. Normally, I would say conditional is no good, but in this case, it kind of does. Or it is kind of good. And then Bringer of Ruin from Priestess here. If you like Heralds, you're very excited about this. Personally, I'm excited that I can now get the entire Golemancer Ascendancy in 2 Ascendancy points. Legion of the Primordial might be one of the strongest Ascendancy notables out there. Just let's recap what it does now, because there's a lot. So for starters, your golems are immune to elemental damage. They resummon 4 seconds after being killed. 100% increased effective buffs, and +2 maximum golems on 1 node for 2 Ascendancy points. This has to be like the undisputed, probably best first lab take in the game, right? If you have any sort of golems going, especially with how their buffs got made stronger, and now you're going to get those doubled in effect. I think with Flame Golem, that's like 40% AoE as well as a bunch of damage. It's crazy, right? It's, at least to me, it seems completely crazy. And I'm kind of hoping with some of the changes to golems and the way this is more accessible, potentially as a necromancer, right? You can get the entirety of Golemancer on top of a necromancer now. You can probably make a very strong Golemancer like you never could before. Like just a completely minion focused build. I'm excited to see if that happens. I might do it myself, but I already have so many things I kind of want to, I'm already kind of looking at and want to do. And then kind of as a final happy note, we get some mastery changes. Well, this is not a happy note. The 10% instant leech is now 5%. It's probably still good and worth taking, but if you crutched on this, you're probably very unhappy. That's a fact. You're probably a little bit unhappy about that. But if you liked Spellslinger, maybe get a little happy, because now from the Wand Passive Mastery, you can get 25% increased mana reservation of, skills supported by Spellslinger. And Spellslinger is a lot of fun. I don't know if this is enough to move the needle. I hope it is, because that would be awesome. I miss Spellslinger a lot. And I do know, because I didn't really talk about it, but a lot of the wand skills had their damage per hit lowered, but their attack speed, their inherent attack speed multiplier raised a lot, which itself is kind of good for Spellslinger, depending on how your cooldown is looking. So there might be something there, and it would be nice to have it back, Anyway, that's it. I'm sure I missed some stuff. There's a lot here. Bug fixes didn't seem to have anything. A lot of the rest of it was kind of generic or just not really worth the time to get twisted up about it. A lot of these changes, I feel specifically the whole meta shakeup, it's probably landed. There's a place in the back of my head that's like, have they forgotten something? And I'm sure people like Ben, who really hyper focus on like progressing to endgame and getting everything done, are talking about how certain skills and archetypes have like not been touched enough. I think there was something about slams being a little strong that was being talked about for a little while, that like in a way that people weren't quite understanding. So but it's still a meta shakeup, especially because definitely Lightning Strike and just the whole defensive trinity around that item, around the Ephemeral Edge, which was also nerfed, right? Lightning Strike was basically hit from every angle. Trickster was nerfed, Ephemeral Edge was nerfed, Lightning Strike was nuked from orbit. That alone is going to open up a lot of things. But also, there is legitimately a lot here that is going to make a lot of things that were good before, but kind of fell off, a lot better. And I think Champion is a big change. I feel like Berserker might have some secrets lying in there that are going to make people very excited. I think Saboteur now can pop off really hard. I think Archmage might still be good. I'm not sure that the Kitava's Thirst version with the Ice Nova's one is good, because they nerfed the Ice Nova Frostbolts. But otherwise, yeah, I think Hierophant is still pretty good with Archmage. because just the general buffs alongside the nerfs probably canceled out. And maybe it's just right where it was, which was good, you know? And then Elementalist definitely is going to have something. These are big changes with big values that seem good for patching holes in a build. And when you find efficient ways to solve big problems, it generally opens up things that you couldn't do before. And this is going to be something maybe unaccounted for. And then overall, just the whole self-cast buffs that like definitely they got the most support from GGG here, self-cast and also Fizz and Chaos Dot. I don't know if it's enough to move the needle in like a significant way where something is going to become meta dominant. I do think Fizz and Chaos though, the dot skills like Reap, Exsanguinate, Essence Drain, Contagion, all that, probably very strong league start. And you know, that's probably good enough, right? A skill doesn't always need to be endgame viable. A skill that is just good for getting your league started it's a welcome addition to the game. Anyway, Kitava's Thirst build soon, and then probably mid-league updates when I switch over to Dominating Blow of Inspiring, which I think is going to be my peak build this league. I'm very excited to try that. Very, very excited. And yeah, Kitava's Thirst with Detonate Dead of Chain Reaction, it's fine. It's still going to clear very well. It's still going to be incredibly tanky. And I'm very excited to take it into the league and learn it because it's so durable and reliable. And that's probably going to be very good, especially for at least the quest versions of the bosses. It's not going to lose enough damage for that to be a problem, at the very least. Have a good one, Exiles.